contact already for the JetBrains license. So if you're interested, let me know, Catherine. I'll get the info to you.
Okay, I think it worked.
Very cool. Good.
All right, let me post the channel link here. Yep. Okay, should be good to go.
Great. All right. Tonight, we are very excited to have Cal Evans here to talk to us about Lando. Some people call him the godfather of PHP. I have known Mr. Evans since I was, I believe, 19 years old. He came down to Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
He gave a talk at a meetup that I was a member of. And so he has been a bane on most of my adult life at this point. So Cal, take it away, please.
It has been my pleasure to be a pain in your butt the entire week, your entire adult life. Let's get my slides up there. Hi, everybody. Hey, Logan, I don't know how I missed this, but when you had the Longhorn PHP slide up, I mean, yeah, I can sit through Matthew. I've heard him speak 100 times, Adam more times than I can count, but you've got Olivia. I don't know how I missed that. Olivia's worth the price of admission right there, okay? Buy your ticket, watch her, and then, go play putt-putt or something for the rest. No, go pay attention because you're gonna learn something. But Olivia is a fantastic speaker. I love listening to her. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see us looking earlier at some of the names of people that are here. And I see some old friends, I see some new friends, and I see some friends that I have not yet met. So hi, everybody. My name is Cal Evans. I am a PHP cheerleader. Yeah, good luck getting that image out of your head, okay? Anyhow, I'm going to talk to you today about Lando. Now, I started using Lando about a year and a half ago, and I actually helped build the system that I use for one of my clients. And it's just really been great for me because I love Docker, but I absolutely hate Docker. And it's just been that way for all of it. So what we're going to talk about is Lando. Lando is basically an orchestration tool for Docker. You have to have Docker installed. Matter of fact, if you install Lando, it will install Docker for you. It will get it all set up and get you ready to go. But it helps put everything together because Docker and Docker Compose and all this have gotten so difficult. But first, let's start with a brief history of web software development. Y'all probably aren't old enough to remember, but in the early days of the internet, we're talking Bubble one here. Every programming book you bought, the first third of it was a brief history of the internet. It didn't matter. I mean, it could have been the phone book, but the first three or four chapters were a brief history of the internet. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how we got here. Back when I first started working with PHP, and this had to be 98, 99. I'm pretty sure it was right around 99. I used to say that PHP developers had to be Jedi Knights because Jedi Knights, the first task or one of their tasks was to build their own lightsaber. Okay. And if you were a PHP developer back in those days, the first thing you had to do was spin up your own server. And that was usually a Linux server, which means you were compiling the kernel, you were compiling Apache, MySQL, PHP, getting them all to work together. And if you could do all of that, programming in PHP was easy. Okay. It really was. Now, eventually somebody figured out, hey, this isn't really the best way to do this. So let's start working on some other ones. And I remember the early days of the LAMP stack on Windows. It was the WAMP stack, the MAMP stack for Mac, all the little AMP children that came and spawned out there. But this was one easy install because I was a Windows user back then. So I was using WAMP. There was one exe I could install that would install everything for me, set it all up. And in only 3 or 4 hours of configuring, I could start developing software using PHP. The problem was I only had one. And so I had to figure out Apache virtual comps and stuff like that to be able to work on multiple projects. Then along came virtual machines and virtualization and VirtualBox and all the tools that we started using with that. And those were great. But, for most of my career, right now I'm working on a machine with 64 gig of RAM, 4 terabytes of hard drive space. It's nice machine set up for video production. That's not usually how I develop. Most of the time I've been, past 10 years has been on a laptop, and usually an underpowered laptop. My one and only foray into Mac was a MacBook Air with 8 gig of RAM. And when you fire VirtualBox up on that, that takes half of your machine or more. So it wasn't great, but still I had everything contained in one little place and it didn't spill out everywhere. And if I had multiple ones, I could spin it up and then spin it back down, spin the next one up, spin it back down. And I could juggle like that. And for those of us who do freelance work, that was really important. Then along came Docker. Yes?
Cal, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna we record this in 2 places, and so I'm officially hitting the Zoom record.
And that's really the gist of it. I hope you enjoyed that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. There you go.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah,
that's okay.
Continue.
As long as you don't want me to start over. So, because this is the very first time I've given this talk, so I've either got 10 minutes worth of material, or we're going to be here all night. I'm really not sure at this point. So, but along came Docker, and Docker gave us the best solution we have had so far. Okay. The problem with Docker is Docker very quickly got to the point where it wanted a different Docker container for each service that you're running. Well, if you're running WordPress, which we're going to be playing with WordPress tonight, if you're running WordPress, that means at least 2. You've got to have 2 Docker containers. If you've got 2 containers, you've got to have networking between them. You've got to have file sharing between them. It gets kind of tricky at that point. And that's where I started losing it with Docker, and was actually considering going back to VirtualBox because at least I understood it. It was everything in one place. It was just a Linux instance on my Windows machine. Then along came Lando. I started working this contract and they said, hey, we're moving to Lando. I need you to learn it. And I got to work with this wonderful woman that really understood this stuff. And she set all of this up and taught me probably 90% of the stuff that I'm going to be teaching y'all here today. She's no longer with our team. She's on another team, but every now and then I still get to talk to her. And she's just one of those people that when I grow up, I want to be as smart as Kim is. So Kim taught me about Lando and how it would work, okay? See, the problem, like I said, the problem was Docker was just too complex, and Docker Compose actually made that worse because, as my buddy Keith Casey says, programmers want to do 2 things. They want to create cool stuff and they want to go home. And really all I wanted to do was develop software. I did not want to become a Docker expert just to be able to create that software. And that was the problem that really everybody was having. I wasn't the only one. So with Docker, we got almost there. With Lando, which is a orchestration wrapper that sits on top of it, and most of Lando, I believe, is written in Node, but it sits on top of it, and it helps you build your Docker containers with a YAML file. Okay, now I hate YAML as much as the next person, but in this case, it actually does some good. Now, unlike a lot of projects out there, Lando came out of the box not only supporting PHP, but encouraging PHP. It's actually built for PHP developers, and there are other things that you can do with it. Yes, you can do Node. Yes, you can do Ruby and things like, and Go. But for PHP, it has Drupal 6 through 9 built and ready to go. It has Joomla, it has Laravel, it has Symfony. And what I'm going to be showing you here is WordPress. I'm not pushing you to use WordPress. I'm using this. WordPress these days is a fairly complex beast, but it's simple enough to show in this. So that's why I'm going to be showing it to you. But it also supports additional services because with WordPress, we've got either Nginx or Apache. We're going to use Apache tonight at work. I actually use Nginx and PHP but it's got Memcached, MongoDB, Redis, Solr, Tomcat, Varnish that you can also orchestrate in this system. I've yet to see a system that is Linux-based that you could not build a YAML file for and be able to spin up a system that looks like your production server. And that's really what we're shooting for, is we want to develop on a system that looks like our production server. Now, my production servers have way more RAM and way more hard drive than I could ever put on my desktop, but you get the idea. You know, I get all the services there, even if they're pared down a little bit, and it takes a little bit longer to run. So, like I said, we use standard YAML files and what Lando calls recipes to create this orchestration. And we set up our YAML file, we spin it up, and then we work on it and spin it back down when we want. I'm going to be showing WordPress. I've got it set, and by the end of this, I'll show you how it takes about, I was timing it earlier, it's about a minute and a half to go from absolutely nothing to I've got a full-blown working copy of WordPress. If you're working with Laravel, same thing. It can spin everything up for you, get you ready to go. If you're working with Symfony, same thing. The point of it is to spend less time futzing around with Docker and containers and your infrastructure, and more time building the application that you really have a passion for to begin with. So, first thing you have to do is properly install Lando. And I put a whole slide in here because this is actually very important. If you have Docker already installed, like when I first started this on my laptop, I already had Docker Desktop on Windows already installed. The easiest thing to do is uninstall that, okay? Kill everything, delete all your images, and kill it. Then install Lando, and it will install not its own version, but its supported version. They usually run at least one point release behind Docker Desktop. I made the horrible sin of upgrading mine the other day, and so Lando tells me every time it boots something, or every time I start a new container up, it tells me you're using an unsupported version of Docker Desktop. I think if I upgrade to the latest version, then those notices will go away. The latest version of Lando, because I'm a point release behind now. But that's how you do it. You install, if you're on Mac, there's a DMG that has everything packaged in. If you're on Windows, there's an exe. If you're on Linux, there are packages for all the major installers, or all the major package managers to install Lando and Docker Desktop for you. Once you get going, and there's the install instructions walk you all the way through down to running Docker's Hello World. And once you get that going, if you can get that going, then everything else is pretty easy. Now, we've got we got really 4 commands that you've got to remember, okay? Lando Start is just what it sounds like. It's going to start up this instance. If Lando itself is not running, then it's got a little more to set up because it sets up some networking on top of everything, but then it will spin up that instance. If this is the first time you've created this instance or you've destroyed this instance before, then it will create everything new, all the Docker containers, and then install everything new. But if you've already got the Docker containers, if it finds all of that out there, then it's just going to start everything back up. Lando Stop is exactly like with Docker. You're just going to take it down. You're not going to delete anything. You're just going to take it down. Lando SSH just takes you into the app server or the main server, whichever the main server will be. In our case, it will be the application server called app server. But if you're not running WordPress, if you're running something else, it will take you into the primary container. But you can use Lando SSH to go into any of the containers. Every now and then I have to log into the database container to do some maintenance and stuff like that. And then Lando Destroy literally destroys the containers. Everything's gone away. And we use that if we've made configuration changes or something like that. We will use that to destroy it, and then we'll start it back up and it will come back up. Okay, like I said, we use YAML files. Now, I'm going to attempt to do this, okay? Hope everybody can see that. This is a Lando YAML file, okay? And as you can see, it's got a name, and the recipe tells it that we want WordPress. And so that it knows how to set up for WordPress. This does not install WordPress for us. It just gets it ready to go, okay? So let's come over here and say Now I'll talk while this is running. You'll notice that the file name is .lando.yaml, okay? And you can actually nest these. You can have a dist. If you're working on our team, we have a .lando.dist.yaml that is all of the main stuff that we have to have. But then I have a .lando.local.yaml that is all my stuff that I need to make sure that everything works the way I want it to. Okay, that's it. No, oh yeah, so you notice I'm using an unsupported version of Docker Compose. I have committed a mortal sin because I'm using 1.30.0, and it doesn't want anything beyond 1.29. So also, it tells me I have a lot of keys. This used to actually be a problem, and I have kind of helped them figure out what the problem was early on in Lando, because I have 30 different SSH keys, and this Lando didn't originally like that. Now they've gotten to where it's a lot easier. Sorry about that. Didn't want to blow anybody's ears out. Now they've gotten to where it's a lot easier and it accepts all of them, but it used to be they had a problem. Okay, it tells me that I'm in home Cal Evans project works just the directory I created to hold this particular instance. I have two services running, app server and database, and these are my URLs. If I say, that just does a Docker, I think it's a Docker PS that I've got customized. You see that the Hyperion Gandalf edition proxy is running. That's what allows us to do name resolution for our local ones. So we don't have to use the port numbers if we don't want. We can use this, and let's say copy that. Let's go over here. It does have a certificate installed. It's a Let's Encrypt. Now, as you can see, it did exactly what we wanted. Okay, we've got it spun up. Telling it we wanted to do WordPress did not. Why did everything go away? Telling it we wanted to do WordPress did not install WordPress for us. It just got us ready to install WordPress. Sorry about that. Let me get on my. There we go. So now we use that other command, Lando SSH, and since I'm in my work directory, it knows which one I want to go into. And let's go here. Nope. There we go. Oh, it's not gonna let me do that. Okay. Oh, I know what I can do. I've got all of this stuff pasted over here. So you're gonna pretend that you didn't see that. Okay, I'm going to download WordPress, and then we downloaded it. I'm going to create the WP config file, and once the WP config file is created, I can do an install, and WordPress has been installed properly. And let's take a look at that. And sure enough, because WordPress automatically installs in a directory called WordPress, you can see that this, oh, you can't because you can't see that screen, can you? You can see that this is a working copy of WordPress. It's not a pretty copy of WordPress, but it is a working copy of WordPress. But working is not really what I wanted. I wanted fully functional. So that's Lando. Yes. And okay, so I'm gonna get rid of Lando and become, oh, I don't want to highlight anything. I'm gonna come over here and now I want to configure it a little bit. So instead of just having a name of our project and our recipe name, we're going to add a few things. The first thing we're going to add is a config option and say we want the web root to be WordPress. This will tell Apache when you're serving pages, look in the WordPress directory. Very simple. Okay, so let's do that. And, oh yeah, and we're also going to tell the app server, I don't want to use the default PHP, which is 7.4. I want to go 8.0. I want to go to the latest and greatest. And I do want SSL created. And since later on, we're going to start playing with Composer, I want to make sure that the Composer directory, that it knows how to find, it'll actually create a map to my Composer user in my environment so that it can read my defaults. And we're going to tell it that app vendor is where it's going to install stuff. So I got that over here. All the way down through here. Okay. Now, if you're monkeying with your Lando.yaml file, make sure that you destroy the app before you make any changes, because you could make changes that it will think, oh, I've got all of these that I need to destroy, or I've got these things that I've got to deal with. And if you don't have those, it might error out. So let's go Lando Start. And now we're going to get, well, we're still going to have to do the WordPress stuff. While that's running, I'll take that. That. And that, therefore, that way I can just get to them when I need them. And now this should be done. And we're back up and running. Now we are here, accept the rest. We still don't have anything. So let's go into SSH. Let's do a core download. Let's create our config file and install. Basically, the core install sets up the databases and stuff like that. Now, I should have done that, but it did not. Let me take a look at this. Oh, okay. Well, we'll put this in for later. That should have worked, but I forgot to put in this config web root. We're going to put that in, and you'll see that next time. I don't want to rebuild it just for that. Okay, so now we've got, we're a little farther along, but I tell you what, I am really, really tired of typing all this information in every time. And Lando allows us on build and on run to do certain tasks. So I'm going to, in our, where's that go? That goes after overrides, okay. Down here, I'm going to say when we're building, go ahead and do the WP core download. And then when we run, oops, no. There we go. And I just did what I told you not to do. But in this case, I didn't make any changes that would make a big difference. Let's get.
I think there's a space on overrides.
Thank you. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, pair programming for the win. Did that work? Yeah. Okay, now we're going to see something a little different. I'm actually going to leave this up here and I'll just talk over it. First, you'll notice that it's installing Composer and it's installing Wpcli. It knows we're working with WordPress, which means it knows we're working with PHP. It knows those are useful tools to us. If we were building with the Go recipe, it would not bother to install either of those for us, but it knows a little bit about it and makes some decent, some smart decisions based on that. So it's going to spin everything up. It's generated our WordPress. WordPress is now installed. And now we should be able to go over here and boom, we've got a full working copy I do not mind telling you that the login and password is admin and admin. I don't mind telling you because you can't get to this. This is local on my machine, and my firewall and my outer firewall on my network would keep you from coming in. I don't really worry about security on these. It's on all my test sites that are built locally. The passwords are admin and admin. Okay, now notice, oh, hey, they have got it. Up to this point, up to last night, it was installing an older version of Akismet, but now it's installing the current version. But this always irritates me, okay? Mainly because Hello Dolly is a copywritten, is under copyright, and it is illegal to include the lyrics of a song that is under copyright in any other work. So this should not be here. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna come over here. We don't need to update Akismet, but under the run, we're just going to tell it delete hello. And that's not the only thing we're going to do on this run. We're going to do all of this here. I've got my build, it's downloading, and in my run, I've got my config, my core, deleting hello Dolly, but I'm also going to add this line here. And remember we had Composer installed? Well, I'm going to be doing some work and I want Code Sniffer installed for me automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. Now, I don't have any config files, so it's not going to be very useful to me, but I've still got it. Now, let's get rid of everything. You'll notice that the WordPress directory here will go away. Oh, if you're working with VS Code like I am, it works beautifully with Lando because it's Docker and it knows how to work inside Docker containers. And so, you know, once I get it up and running, I can modify my code. It's visible in the container. It goes, you know, I don't have to do anything fancy for that. Okay, now at this point, we're going to see everything we have seen, except Composer's also going to install one quick little package for us. And since I've done this 20 or 30 times already, it's going to install it from cache. It's not, shouldn't have to go download anything. I've had that waiting for database thing. I've had that happen, go spin for like 20 times on some of my larger databases. Just it's waiting for the MySQL, or in my case, MariaDB, to spin up and get ready. We deleted hello. And we installed, I'm using version 3.6 of PHP Code Sniffer. We'll go in here, PCS, and it's going to tell me I've got to have a config file. We can also go PHP version, and notice we're using 8.0.3, latest and greatest version of PHP. Always keep that current. This is the final getting fancier and make it even fancier file. One of the things I like doing is using JQ to view JSON code or JSON payloads. And I do a lot of work with APIs, and JQ is just an invaluable tool. However, if I'm just SSH'd into Lando, I don't have root permission, so I can't run apt-get update and apt-get install to get them to install that. So I'm introducing now, in addition to build and run, we have run as root, and you'll see when we do this that in between the process, it's going to go and set, it's going to update apt-get, and then it's going to install JQ. And we're going to grab those from right here. So whether you need to install something as root, or you need to install something as the user itself, and the user itself is always www-data, you have that option, and where you need to run it in the process. And these, as you can see, these can be any valid Linux command or any tool that is currently installed. So let's exit. Okay, and this time we're going to see it. We're going to see apt-get do its thing. It's downloading, and then it kills it, and it restarts everything, and it waits till our database comes up. There's nothing in that database. That's why it comes up relatively quickly. I have some WordPress instances that have been running since 2013. Okay, you can see this is the apt-get. If you're familiar with apt-get, you see it doing all of that. And it installed JQ for us. And it deleted hello and installed Code Sniffer. Now, one of the options you have available to you inside the environment, and we're going to start differentiating between inside the container and outside. But inside the container, you've actually got an environment variable that holds a JSON package of the entire configuration. So I can echo. Okay, but that's not really useful to us. But we can now pipe that to JQ, and now we can see everything. And we can see, the MySQL. It's exporting to an external connection. It's got, I don't have that yet, so I won't talk about that. Here are URLs that we can work with, that we can use to call it up. All of that information, our user, what our primary user is, all of that is available to us. Now we're inside the container. Okay. That was the final getting fancy slide. One of the problems that I have with WordPress, and quite honestly, in a lot of the applications that I write, is applications like to send email. What's the old adage? Well, the old adage is from Emacs, every application will mature to the point where it can read email. Well, every application these days can send email. So we need to be able to handle email, but I don't want to be sending out email, especially if I've got some test users in there. I don't want my test users to actually get email, and I don't want to have to keep inventing new email addresses to myself to do it. So one of the services that we can install is MailHog. And I'm going to show you how to do MailHog, but the basic concept applies if you're doing Redis or MongoDB or anything like that. It's this simple to say, I need this extra service. So let's go over here. And now this is indented one level. It is under our services. So we've got app server, and then we've got mail service, okay? And we're going to say for mail service, we want MailHog, and we want it to port forward. That means we want this to be visible outside of the container, okay? And we're going to hog from app server. This means if the database server by some chance happens to send an email, this won't deal with it. So now if we take that, we start that up, we're going to see it. The biggest thing you're going to notice, other than the fact that we are going to have some extra certain volumes, is we're going to have a new URL that we can visit. That's going to do all of this. It's going to set it all up. I guess now would have been a great time to prepare a couple Wookiee jokes, but I didn't. So, because I promised no Star Wars jokes. But it's going to set everything up. While it's doing that, I can. Oh, okay, yeah. Installing Squiz Labs. Okay, now notice, now we have a mail service URL in addition to our regular URL. So let's find that. Every time you destroy and rebuild WordPress, it gets real persnickety and it wants you to re-log in. I don't get that, but still. Okay, so now I can go to this, and it's using the port, and I get MailHog. And notice I've already got one email in my inbox. Whenever I create a new WordPress instance, it says, okay, your username is admin, the password is whatever you set it to when you were logging in our case, admin. But I can go over here, and whenever I add a new user, it likes to send that user an email. So let's go. By the way, if you ever have anybody log in to your system as Bob the Builder, that's probably me. That's my default username that I don't want people to know is me. But I also use it a lot here in testing. And I'm going to leave that check, send the user an account or an email. I go over here and I'll have 3, okay? Because I've got a new website, and then I get an email to the admin saying, hey, we've got a new user registered. And then Bob, see, Cal plus Bob at calevans.com. Bob got one. But now this didn't go to Cal plus Bob at calevans.com. This stayed right there on my server. Mailhog just intercepts it and lists it all here. So if you're building a system that is sending out emails, or you're testing emails, sending and stuff like that, Mailhog is just an absolutely cool tool to have installed. And Lando makes it very simple to spin up. One problem I have is that I always forget 2 things. I forget what port the database is running on and what port the Mailhog is running on. So I've got a couple of helpers. Mailhog, I type MH, and it gives me, okay, the work instance, which is what we've been working on, is at 63482. Now, if I had multiple Mailhogs up and running, they would all be on different port numbers, so I can have multiple Mailhogs running. I also have one for database, because I never can remember what port, when I spin it up, it tells me what port it is exporting the database to, but that number changes each time I spin up another one. So this one is at 63480, and I can go, and since I'm a Windows user, I have Heidi, and I can just paste that in right there and open it, because this is set up. No, I never want to change that. And they're having a very basic WordPress database. It's got data in it. There's our hello world, there's our sample page, and then there's our draft privacy policy. And the database is running on a container of its own, and it's using 3306 inside the container, but it exports to another port number, and it's not a random number, it's incremented, but it starts somewhere in the 5900s and exports that. So you do have to check it each time. And so I've got these little bash macros that I use to check that. And I think those are actually published on my website. If they're not, I'll make sure that I post them on a blog post tomorrow or this weekend, so that in case you get ready to use Lando, those are really helpful. Okay, so now let's talk about everything else. How am I doing on time? Longer than I thought. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the last bit of it. If build, run as root, and run won't get you where you need to go, then they also have what's called tooling. Now, tooling is stuff these are commands that you run outside the container, but they actually execute inside your container. And I've defined 2 of them. WP, which will run in app server, and it will run the WP CLI, which is just set as WP, and LI. And LI will run in app server, and it will simply echo out the Lando info variable, but it will pipe it through JQ for me. Now, I'll show you in a minute. That's kind of a silly command to write, since Lando actually has something does that. But for demonstration purposes, bear with me here. So we're going to put those down here in the tooling section. And you guessed it, we're going to rebuild. And it's going to destroy everything, and you're going to see these 2 directories delete and go bye-bye, and then it's going to start rebuilding everything. Let's see. No, nobody's got any questions. Okay. Either I've done a fantastic job or I've lost everybody, and it's usually the latter, but hey.
There's one question on the YouTube chat.
Oh, okay. What is it while we're waiting for this to build?
Catherine asks, can DDev and Lando coexist on a single PC?
I don't know what DDev is, but my guess would be yes, since every time Lando spins up its own set of containers, it will, if you've got any ports that are going to be exported, it uses its own very high number of ports. The only thing you couldn't do is if DDev is something like Lando, which is an orchestration layer on top of Docker, you could not control the same project with both of them. Okay, you'd have to choose one or the other. But if you had project A using DDEV and project B using Lando, then yeah, you couldn't have, you shouldn't have any problem. I've had it running with straight Docker projects before. I have had it running with VirtualBox projects before and never had a conflict. I've even got, I think this particular machine has MySQL installed natively and up and running, and it never conflicts with it because it never uses 3306 in Windows or in the Windows for Linux, the Windows subsystem for Linux. It always exports another one, and the 3306 stays inside the container. Okay. Now, if you type just Lando, it gives you all the commands that are available to you, but you'll notice we have LI and WP. Okay, so let's just try the Lando WP plugins list. Plug in. There we go. Now, that is the equivalent of Lando SSH and then WP plugin list and then exit. That's all it did, is it logged into Lando, it ran the command, and it exited for us. I can do the same thing with Lando LI. Remember, that's just gonna display our Lando information for us in a nice, pretty format. But like I said, that one's kind of silly since I can do Lando info and get the same basic thing, okay? And it even tells me, it gives me a little more because it tells me that mail service is running and that in mail service is running as mailhog user and things like that. So, but the tooling was just an example to give you an example of some of the things that you can do. We use tooling at work to run Webpack on our JavaScript, to run SAS on our CSS without having to log in, go into the directory and set up everything and then run it. We have it all set up as a Lando command. We can just make one command, boom, and it does it, and we're ready to go. Okay, so to wrap things up, I can hear the cheers already. Docker's a powerful tool, but for me, it's just difficult to work with. And that's compounded when you have to use Docker Compose. Lando helps you orchestrate all of this with a single YAML file. If you're on a team, like I said, you can have multiple YAML files. You have one that's the base YAML file. What we were building would be considered the base YAML file. And you can have a local, which is literally .lando.local.yaml, that is all of your particular problem or your particular configuration tweaks. On the one on mine, I told you I used to have a problem with a lot of keys. I had a local YAML file that would go through and delete all the ones that I knew did not need to be there. So it I wouldn't have that problem with the keys. And this way I can create a configuration file that really closely matches my production system. And when I'm not using it, I can shut it down. Now, like I said, I got a beefy machine here, and it's not unusual for me to have 4 or 5 Landos running at once. On my laptop with 16 gig of RAM and a terabyte of hard disk, I could have 3 or 4 running with reasonable performance for a development site. But here's the secret to this. I do a lot of one-off plugins and stuff like this, projects for my own personal use. And I'm a creature of habit. If I am writing a WordPress plugin, I want it set up this way. I want this here. I know how I want everything to look to get started for this. Well, all I do now is create a directory, copy the Lando file over, change the name of the project, and maybe tweak a couple variables, Lando Start, and in 15 to 20 minutes, I'm up and running and actually writing the code that I wanted to write. I'm not having to sit there and figure out how to do Docker Compose and all of this just so I can get to that point. Because honestly, used to be when I was having to do Docker Compose, you were looking at the first night of any project was just getting the containers set up. And at that point, I was so frustrated that I'd go out and drink afterwards and really question whether the life choices that brought me to this point, you know. But now I can just move that file over, Lando Start, of course, git init, and boom, I'm off and running. I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't have a slide after that. Usually I've got a slide after that. If I can say one quick shout out to my buddies at SiteGround. If you are doing WordPress work and you need a solid hosting partner, my buddies at SiteGround are great. I host a lot of my stuff with them. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bobby and Logan and Chris and Ben. And I'm going to say thank you to you gentlemen for inviting me, and thank you to the audience for listening to me. I hope you found it valuable.
Good job, Cal.
Thank you, Cal.
Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I think we have a couple questions here, and I always try to come up with questions for all the talks. But feel free to ask in the Q&A, and then we'll also the YouTube channel. We'll go through the comments on YouTube and ask them to Cal. So there's just a little bit of delay on YouTube stuff. So
I need to answer a couple because I see that Jason has asked a couple. First of all,
yeah,
let's see if I can do this. That's my keyboard. Oh, you can't see it. It's real pretty red keys. Oh, I can't believe it's not, because it's the background. Sorry about that. I tried. And yes, it's the old IBM Type M, you know. I don't, again, you kids probably don't remember, but when IBM's first came out, IBM PCs first came out, the keyboard could double as a weapon. I mean, you could swing this bad boy. And they had literally had a metal plate in the bottom of the keyboard. So I always, and the keys had nice clicky sounds to it. So I always love those kind of heavy keyboards. And this is a Logitech, I don't even know the model, but you can color it all different colors. I like red because everything I do is urgent. Let's see, one other thing. Does Lando YAML inherit its command and constructs from Docker, or does it have its own commands? It's similar to Docker, but it is its own entity, okay? Now, if you get into the advanced part of Lando, there are some pass-through, there's some ways to do pass-through stuff straight to Docker Compose. So you can write stuff in your, if for some reason you just can't get it done, but Docker Compose YAML will let you do it. There's ways to pass commands straight through to Docker Compose. I don't ever have any problems that are quite that complex. I'm not launching nuclear missiles here, so you know I'm building WordPress sites, so it's pretty cut and dried. So, but thank you, Jason. Two great questions.
thanks, Jason. Yep. So we got another one. Oh, David saying thanks. Thanks to Cal. So one question I had for you, Cal, is do you know if installing it works with Homebrew, or you recommend the DMG approach?
When I had Mac, and when I first started using Lando, I was actually running on my old MacBook Air, and I had Homebrew and was a big Homebrew user, but I still installed this one piece manually. I didn't let Homebrew control it, which means that you can't let Homebrew control Docker container or Docker desktop or whatever the Docker executable is. But this was one of the very few pieces that I did not use Homebrew. And for the first year after I moved back to Windows and started using before Windows subsystem for Linux came out, which is the stupidest name, I really missed Homebrew. Now I spend most of my time in the Linux command window, and I've got Windows, which is basically the container for my browsers.
Yeah, the WSL doesn't really roll off the tongue.
No, it
too
doesn't.
easily. And the other thing I was thinking there at the end is I think Docker should update their tagline. You know, it makes you question your life choices. You know, it's like really get the devs to come over to their side. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So how the other question I had is like if you have a WordPress recipe or Laravel recipe that comes with Lando and installs like Mariah but you want MySQL, like how easy is it to like override the core applications that, that comes with the recipe?
Oh, dead simple. Hang on. I can't show you that particular one, but I can basically tell you what you would do. App server is our web server. We would have another service here called database. And the first thing we would have is type equals MySQL, MariaDB, MS SQL, Postgres, whatever your flavor of database is, that's what you can override it. And there's an awful lot of configuration that you can do at that level. I generally don't, because I like the defaults. I like that it uses MariaDB. It automatically sets it up for NODB. So, that's the default. I don't have to remember to set that as a table type or anything. It just does all that for me. So
cool. That seems really useful. And I love the Star Wars. I've always wanted, the more Star Wars dev utilities that exist, I'm all for it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I really tried to come up with a good Wookiee joke to end on, but I just, something around let the Wookiee win, but it just could not find anything that really spoke to me. So
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So the commands that control the containers, like the Lando, what was it? Start, stop, destroy, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do those commands all generally tend to work equally on Windows versus Mac?
Yes, matter of fact, it's seamless. The only difference you'll find is, and I hate to be a Windows bigot, but most of my team, Jason, don't you ever tell anybody I'm talking out of turn here, but most of my team runs on Windows, but I run, or on Mac, but I run on Windows, and their stuff, because of Docker, not because of Lando, not because of Mac, but because Docker sucks on Mac, most of their stuff is about twice as slow as mine. My test pages will pull up. We have a very complex WordPress install, and but it will still, I can get a page up in under 4 seconds on a development machine. So and I've got a blog post on my blog. If you Google for Cal Evans and Lando, there's a whole blog post. I read 4 or 5 different blog posts on how to set up Lando under WSL, and I distilled it down into the 20 or something commands. And it really, the blog post starts off by telling you, look, if you don't understand what this is doing, don't do it. But I'm not going to explain why you're doing this. This is just these are the commands you type, you do this, it's going to work. So if you're looking to install it on WSL, it runs beautifully under WSL. It runs absolutely the fastest under native Linux though.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been wanting to get more talks where showing off, the Windows subsystem Linux and how, the advances that they've made, because it's a ton better just working on Windows now. Inside Linux, the Cygwin just is not anywhere as good. So
well, and since I don't play games on this machine, basically all Windows does is host the WSL, and it's a pretty interface for my browsers, and that's it. Because I live right here in this command window or in VS Code, and VS Code plays very nicely for this. Matter of fact, I don't have it installed on this machine, but there's actually a Lando extension that you can install to color code and help you with the specifics of the YAML files.
awesome.
Do you happen to know if it's straightforward to get like a step debugger like Xdebug working via Lando?
I almost included that in this talk, but I knew I was already going long. I've gotten it to work. Xdebug will work in here, and it's a matter of adding some config things here under app server, and then because I'm using VS Code, I have to put a launch.json in the in a .vs code directory so that it knows to listen for Xdebug. But and then it's just a matter of rebuilding Lando and firing up the browser. But I've actually, I had it running last week, and because I was working on just a god-awful piece of code, and vart up and die was failing me. So I had to install. Don't ever tell Derek I said that. I love Derek. I appreciate the work that he's done on Xdebug, but I'm still a vart up and die guy. So old habits die hard. There is actually a page on the Lando, in the Lando documentation on getting Xdebug set up with Lando and getting Xdebug to talk to VS Code and to PHP Storm. So no matter what you're doing, there's probably a tutorial up there. They've also got a very good Slack channel that is, the community channel is monitored, and they're very helpful. Dustin over at Pantheon is one of their managers of the channel, and Dustin does a great job. I forget Dustin's last name.
Looks like there's another question from Jason there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that first one wasn't a question. It's just inside baseball. What does Lando Docker conversion look like for dev teams that aren't using containers for deployment and only local development? It's still there. Oh, is it still the right choice over VMs? Absolutely. Docker is the right choice over VirtualBox, simply because I can, it's like I said, I got a beefy machine, but on my laptop, I could have 4 websites running at once, 4 separate Lando projects running at once on 16 gig of RAM. And VirtualBox likes to take up 4 to 8 minimum. So if I had one running, that's pretty much at that point, your fan on your laptop sounds like a jet and you expect it to take off at any moment. You try to spin up the second one, it actually will levitate. So I firmly believe that Docker is a better solution for teams for development than VirtualBox. But Docker has some problems in itself. And I worked on another team a couple of years ago where we used Ansible scripts to orchestrate the Docker and all that. And that just, it was a pain, because we had one person, we have one development tool manager, and it was basically his job just to manage the Ansible scripts. And, that gets expensive when you've got one person that's all they're doing. So
I like Ansible.
Oh, I like Ansible, but it wasn't the right tool for this job. So, but Lando takes the pain out of doing that. And we've got, like I said, we ship a lando.dist.yaml and a couple of custom scripts that get called in the build and the run as root to set up things the way we specifically need them to set up. And ours is really a non-standard setup, and we were able, Kim was able to get this thing running in a couple of days, get it up and running and solid, and then she tweaked it for another month, and we really got it to where it worked everywhere. And I was her problem child because I was swapping over to Windows at that point. Everybody else was Mac, and then all of a sudden she's got to worry about a Windows person. So.
I imagine if you're not using Lando in production and you have a pipeline and you're kind of like got all the build steps working out already built, and the containers are all that stuff's plugged in and good to go, it plays nicely with that. It's you're just committing a separate YAML file, right? And then your pipeline doesn't have to run Lando, right? It can do its own. You could have the Docker file and all that other stuff in there, and it's fine.
Yeah, our pipeline or our production systems don't even run in Docker. They're run in a virtual hosted server, but it's not Dockerized at all. But we've got a CI pipeline. We use Jenkins, and Jenkins takes the Git repo that we check in and pulls everything and builds everything and does all the composer and does everything, gets it all set up, and then it pushes it up to either staging or production for us. The point of Lando is we were able to configure our local machine so that it's running the same version of PHP, the same version of MySQL. We could get everything exactly like it was in production. And if something changes in production, all we've got to do is change our Lando file, rebuild, and everybody's up to date.
Awesome. That seems super helpful, and it making local dev a lot easier. Docker and having it work across Windows and Mac and Linux. And it all works the same for local dev. It doesn't matter the OS. That's super helpful. And definitely more people should be using Lando or something like Lando if working on a team. There's definitely there's other things that exist. Like I think Laravel has some different projects to make it easier for running things locally. But that's just Laravel, right? Like that's not all the different things, all the different applications and frameworks. They're focused on just solving Laravel problems, whereas Lando is focused on solving like PHP, and it's got other languages as well, right? Like I think that Node and Python.
Node, Python, Go, and Ruby are all supported, out of the box. I can say up here for the recipe, I can say Go, and it will set me up a project that is ready to compile Go applications. One of the things I loved early on in Docker, and Lando just helps me do this even better, is not pollute my main machine or my main operating system with all these stupid little libraries and stuff. If you use FFmpeg or something like that, because I use FFmpeg for my podcasting to stitch things together. And if you've got all that, then you've got to have all those libraries installed. You've got to manage and maintain all of those. I can put all of those in a Docker container, and they don't mess with my main stuff, and they won't conflict if I'm running one version on this project and another version on that one. But again, I have to remember how to do all that stuff in Docker. Lando lets me just spin it up and go.
Cool.
If you like this, and this is going to sound weird because I've spent an hour telling you about Lando. Lando is a great tool. I love Lando. That's the one I use. But y'all might want to have my buddy Andrew Kea on. He's got PHP for Linux, and that's another great tool that does something very similar to this, and it helps you set up your development environment. If y'all don't have him on as a speaker, at least go out and check out his project, because it's a really cool project. And Andrew's a community member. His sole focus is making this stuff work on PHP. So,
yeah, we definitely love to have more people talk about projects like that. So for sure, we might ping you for his email address or something, some help getting things set up. But yeah,
I've got his email address. I sign him up for mailing lists all the time. Be happy to.
Nice. Yeah. Let's see, do you have any more YouTube questions? I have been checking. All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording the Zoom here, but leave the YouTube up.
Do we want to? Anybody want to take a crack at this question from Israel?
Yeah. Wasn't sure how to answer that. I'm like, yeah, we used to do advertising on Facebook, and we'd spend like $20-$40 a month for like publishing our events on. It's like getting more people to basically look at it on Facebook, and that definitely boosted attendance for some, since he's asking about other user groups. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, should we start advertising on TikTok? Like, who wants to?
I was about to say the same thing. Can we start streaming on TikTok or something?
Yeah. I don't know. How does that work? we barely figured out the Zoom and YouTube thing. Now,
So I'd actually be
Been
interested
practicing
in,
your TikTok dances.
I'd be interested in Cal's take on this because I know you talk to a lot of user groups. Cal, have you seen any that are particularly good at getting the kind of younger developer, maybe not younger in age, but younger as in time and career?
Not really, other than just getting out there on social media. And the advice I give to a lot of people, especially like if they're trying to start user groups or user-oriented events and stuff, is don't try to create your own channels. Go out and find out where they already are and where they're already congregating, and start interacting there. Of course, y'all know you absolutely love it when somebody pops into your LinkedIn group and starts advertising for somebody else without being a member. So don't do that. But start becoming an active member, or have some of your members that are active in your user group go and do that. Like Ben Ramsey runs phpc.org, which is a forum. Have somebody from the unified or the mashup, was it mashup PHP? Have somebody be participating and answering questions, because I can tell you those are brand new user questions, and so that's the people you're looking for. And at the end of them, say, hey, here's a link to a video where we talked about that, or we've got this coming up in a new meeting, or we just love to have you at the meeting. Start doing something like that.
good advice as always, Cal. Do you want to plug your podcast? Do you want to plug anything? Oh, you're muted.
I would if I had a podcast.
Is it still your podcast? Yeah.
It is not my podcast anymore. Karate Waseem is now host of Voices of the Elephant, the longest running PHP focused podcast. And he is doing an excellent job. He's got 2 in the can already. The one he released yesterday, I believe, was Mr. Matthew Wero-Finney, Supreme Allied Commander of Zen Framework. Salute, or whatever they're calling it these days, Laminas. I think
Laminas.
that's it. And he talked with Matthew a lot. He dives a lot deeper. I got there towards the end where I said, okay, I got 3 questions. Here they are, boom, boom, boom. Not that I had lost my passion for it, but I had just gotten so busy. And Karate and I talk all the time on Twitter. And we were talking one day, and I was telling him that I just hate that I don't have time to do it anymore. And he said, "Well, let me do it." So he has stepped up, and he is taking over, and he is taking ownership of this. So
Awesome.
probably by the end of the year, it will all be all him. And then at that point, I'll probably start lobbying to be a guest. So
Nice.
Good luck.
yeah, being a guest on Karate's podcast is like being a speaker at Atlanta PHP. You got to get in line. So Chris
But
gets
do you
tired
get
of
a
me telling
mug?
that joke, but Atlanta PHP is the only user group I have ever contacted and said, "Hey, can I speak?" And they say, "No, we got too many speakers right now." So
For the record, we did have him eventually. We already had 9, I think 8 or 9 people slotted in, and that was just we had all kinds of trouble trying to bump and swap and flip people around before, and I was like, we can't. I'm sorry. It was just I felt terrible, but it worked out.
that's fine. I got my coffee mugs. We're good.
Yep.
It's like, yes, sometime next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually was January, and I was like, what about August or September? It was almost a whole year.
Yeah.
But we don't have that problem now. We keep falling behind on getting people. So it's because
Yeah, I'm
Merge
impressed.
PHP has helped us out.
There we
The
go.
best that
Merge
we've done in
PHP.
Merge
Yeah,
is
that's
like
it.
3 months, and that was pretty rare.
That's one of my speaker monks. I use these on a daily basis. So.
Oh,
Oh,
awesome.
good.
I think
I
mine.
do not use one
think
because I
I've
still have
lost
not
mine on
actually
the move,
presented at my
actually,
own
now that
group.
you say it.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was saying I think I lost mine in the move because I haven't seen it since we moved, and
Ah,
that's sad. You said you don't have one, Chris?
Nope. I decided, I was not just gonna take one out of the box and use it because I have not officially presented. I got to keep my streak going of not ever presenting in my own group. Maybe when I hand it off, I'll do my last meeting will be me presenting, and so I can get a mug.
There you
We'll
go.
see.
Yeah, hosts should never speak, and hosts or MCs should never speak at their own conference. For 1 year, I ran the Dutch PHP conference, and Lorna Jane Mitchell, love Lorna Jane. Lorna Jane followed me, and she ran it the next year. And so she sat down, and we did a brain dump. And I said, okay, here's the Cal's batshit crazy rule. If you're running a conference, you're batshit crazy if you try to speak at that conference. So, and she, to her credit, she did not that year. I think the year after she did.
Too many things going on. I was going to say, how much is it to do Zazzle mugs? Maybe we should start a merge PHP Zazzle coffee cup fund.
We were using Cafe Press,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and I'm trying to think. It's been so long since I've ordered a batch, but they weren't exactly cheap either. We'd have to find some sponsor money probably.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. We have such positive feedback. It's worth it, and everybody appreciates them. So.
Yep. Cool.
We could probably get Wayfair to cover that. They used to cover pizza for Boston, and so I would imagine a mug is cheaper than pizza.
And we'll put a logo on it, right? Like, come on, that's easy sell.
Little tiny Wayfair logo like hidden in the corner. They wouldn't
And
care,
the furniture.
to be honest, but
Feel like elephants, PHP on one side, logo on the other.
yeah.
Cool. Do we have anything else, guys?
Yeah. I think
I think yeah.
questions
That's
left.
good.
All right. Thanks again, Cal. It was really nice to have you. And I actually learned something. It was great.
Thank y'all for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Cal.
Thank you, Cal.
Thanks again. Appreciate your time. Send our best to Kathy.
We'll do it. Bye-bye.
Nice seeing everyone.